Well, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon. It depends when, or good night. It depends when you see this video. How are you? I hope everyone is okay and that you're staying safe and healthy. Today, I'd like to introduce a new section of our course, which is the public and private governance and transparency. And I mean, we're going to see each other through Adobe Connect, but I'd like to also have this uh, recorded video so you can have more information and I mean all the information that you need to understand and to conduct the class, okay, and the section of this course. Right. So we're going to be talking, as I said, uh, about public-private governance and transparency. And in order to do so, we're going to first define what public governance is and what organizational private governance is. So the first one, public governance, it refers, as it says there in the presentation, sorry, that I've prepared for you. It refers to preconditions to run, govern a jurisdiction, and it processes and structures the necessary means to ensure that government can stay in power until the end of its mandate. That's what public governance would deal mainly with. Whereas private governance, it is derived from the corporate governance experience, and it deals with the specific organizations that comprise the public sector. These governance addresses how the organizations are structured in order to mitigate or eliminate any conflict of interests between their staff, their personnel, or what they do, and the citizens that the organizations represent. So that would be the private governance, the definition of private governance, okay? Then in this particular issue, we're talking about also transparency, the need for transparency. And there is a rule of transparency. And this rule actually states that any official business must be conducted in a way that it should present any of their procedures, the process of their business, the information. All this should be available and should be understandable to for all the people and the groups that are receiving this business or this goods or this services, and to ensure the protection of their security and privacy. So that's what the rule of transparency is. I mean, the information I receive from a business must be transparent in order for me to be totally secure and of the excellence I'm receiving, and to have total assurance that my privacy when dealing with a business is protected. All right, so that's what the rule of transparency mostly states. You can see that there is a wheel there of how this governance and this transparency works. And first of all, it must always act in public interest at all times. As you can see, if you look at point A, there is a strong commitment to integrity, to ethical values, and to the rule of law. So it's important that companies, businesses conduct their business with integrity, respecting ethical values and with ethical values that pertain not only their company, but also the society, the environment they're working with, and always abiding the law, respecting the rule of law. In point B, you can see that there must be openness and a comprehensive stakeholder engagement. Stakeholders, remember, are the people who have an interest in the business. So the company must engage stakeholders in an open and comprehensive manner. This leads to a definition of the outcomes in terms of sustainable economic, social, and environmental benefits. So all those benefits must be protected and looked after. Then there is a determination of the interventions that are necessary to optimize the achievement of these outcomes, which leads to a development in the capacity of the entity, including the capability of its leadership and the individuals within it, which leads in point F, as you can see, to the management of risks and performance through a robust internal control and strong public financial management. And lastly, the implementation of good practices in transparency and reporting to deliver effective accountability. So this is what the wheel of governance and transparency talks about. All right. So what is private governance? And I'm going to start by telling you about two different cases, for instance, and that will open this debate. Okay. So, for example, the first case I'm going to present you with a case. It's when the city of Detroit employees were forced back in 2014 to accept severe cuts in their pension payouts to avert the total collapse of the retirement fund. Some of the blame should have fallen to Governmental Accounting Standards Board, which is the GASB, which creates the regulations followed by states and localities for financial statements, and it was slow to make rules to help ensure that pensions and retiree benefits were adequately funded. This is the first one. Then the second case would be, for example, students purchasing a microwave oven for their dorm room. They plug it into an electrical outlet anywhere in the United States, and it operates perfectly without smoke, fire, or electrical shock. The standards for the sockets and safeguards for the oven are in place thanks to the work of companies such as UL, which is formerly the Underwriters Laboratories, which certifies that products are safe. So these two cases lead to what do credit rating agencies, such as what I mentioned, the GASB or the UL, in the examples above have in common, in the examples I just mentioned have in common, where they're private governance institutions. These are private groups whose decisions become public policy, dramatically affecting people's lives with little or no public participation or scrutiny. At the same time, they serve important public purposes that governmental bodies may be ill-suited to address. So these groups are found everywhere, in finance, in commerce, in industry, and in the professions. Among many of other public functions, these organizations certify professionals and tradespeople as competent, establish industry regulations, and set technical and professional standards that give them broad reach into people's lives and have enormous impact on society. So that's the first point. But because their operations lack the transparency and accountability required of governmental bodies, these groups constitute a policy-making territory that is largely unseen, unreported outside of trade publications, uncharted, and not easily reconciled with democratic principles. So as such, that territory demands to be fully explored, documented, and understood. To put the matter even more urgently, private governance should be recognized and scrutinized as a distinct and important area in the field of public policy. All right, so talking about societies. Societies are governed by rules, some of them informal, but they're widely acknowledged, for example, such as social norms, professional expectations, and some codified as laws and regulations. Most people learn that laws and regulations are enacted by public governmental bodies that in democracies derive their authority from a constitutional right to rule and to have their decisions enforced by the courts via governmental intermediaries. For example, the police, the U.S. Department of Justice, or the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. In a democratic society, government institutions operate according to principles that require transparency, public participation, equal justice, and the rule of law. And they maintain publicly available records of their actions and decisions. This is the ideal, and this is what happens in a democracy. The boilerplate description of the elements of public policy making and enforcement is woefully incomplete, however, in that it omits a significant area of formal governance not subject to democratic principles and representative government. Specifically, private groups also make and enforce rules that function like the laws and regulations that derive from the government. Distinguishing 5 arenas of policymaking, for example, in the United States, we can explain why private governance institutions must be included in any map of the American public policy universe, for instance. 3 of these arenas are legislatures, which enact laws, executive branches, which it's with its administrative agencies. This make and enforce rules to implement the laws, and the judiciary, which enforces and also makes policy through its decisions, which are generally well understood. So these 3 arenas, the legislation, the executive branch, and the judicial branch, are generally well understood. Unfortunately, in much of the political science and political literature, they are depicted as the entire policy world, and this is not so. They are covered thoroughly in academic literature and discussed widely among the interested or attentive public. But there is a 4th arena which is not well understood, and there's a 5th arena. I'm going to talk first about the 4th one. This is not well understood by the public, and it receives much less academic attention than the first 3. This 4th arena consists of hybrid agencies that are created by government but operate with varying degrees of independence from government and its resources, and often take on organizational forms unlike those of regular government agencies. For example, the Federal Reserve, which is the central bank of the United States. It contains some private elements, but it is very powerful as a policymaker in the government, and it has been intentionally distanced from representative government. So there is an issue there. And then there is a 5th arena, which is less understood by the public or policy analysts, and it's almost unseen. This 5th arena, it's private organizations that make public policy. It is unseen because it is not typically recognized as a distinct arena of public policy making at all. Some private organizations shape the distribution of resources in society and govern behavior in a fashion similar to that of government bodies, with an important exception. The rules under which they operate do not require transparency, equal justice, clearly defined public participation, freely available statements of the standards they set, or other democratic structures. They're not systematically accountable to a representative assembly of the public, and are even less so to the public safety and the public directly. The decisions of private groups in the 5th arena are enforceable by various means and often by government itself, including courts and federal agencies. A very large number and assortment of these private organizations make policies that affect the larger public, for example, their health and safety, their quality of life, and opportunities and choices available to them. But these private entities have authoritative rulemaking functions and are often concealed by the variety of forms they take. They include trade associations, professional societies, and not-profit organizations. In fact, even a for-profit enterprise may include private governance as one of its activities. That private governance is democratically and even organizationally deficient while significantly affecting the lives of those who are subject to its decisions is sufficient a reason for defenders of a free democratic society to be wary of this form of policy making, even if it is generally accepted and constitutionally protected. Nevertheless, with this lecture, my aim is not to condemn private governance, but to shine a bright light on it, to recognize it as a category of public policy making, to examine the blemishes that mark private governance and consider ways to obviate its democratic deficiencies, and where appropriate, to defend it. The goal is to recognize private governance, to understand it in its multiple forms, and to make the case that excluding it from the field of public policy diminishes both the understanding of the full policymaking universe and the proper reach of democratic aspirations. So basically, this is what private governance and what I wanted to say about private governance. And as a recap, I'd like to show you this last wheel of the elements of governance. Remember, it must be accountable to not only the public it serves, but also to the government it derives from, and to the responsibilities it acquires when dealing with the public and the society as a whole. It must be transparent, so the information, everything that, the processes, the procedure they're using must be transparent and understandable to the public. It must respond to what the public is requiring from them, so information, accountability, responsibility, so they must respond to these requirements. Equitable and inclusive, in the sense that it must be treating everyone in an equal manner and including everyone, so that their procedures, their information, the way they do things are include and are understandable to every single member of the society. Must be effective and efficient, so they must have the know-how in order to make effective changes when needed in society, and efficient in the way they're proceeding, they're doing these changes, they're undertaking these changes. Always, they must be followers of the rules of law, so they must abide to the law and follow the rules of law. Participatory, everyone needs to participate in this process, so they cannot make decisions without seeking consensus, which is the last point. It's consensus oriented. So the ideal governance should always be oriented towards reaching a consensus with all the stakeholders and shareholders that are involved in this governance, in this process. Okay, so this is basically what I wanted to tell you. So if you look in your study guide, you have, as we've been doing in other classes, you have an assignment. And I want you to choose two of these following assignments. I'm going to put this, well, you already have it in your Moodle. So the first one would be conducting teamwork. This means that it's a team job, all right? On both the debate and corresponding questions sections of the public-private partnership, transparency and accountability, where is my data, and the analysis of the Siemens & Johnson case, the Johnson & Johnson case. So I want you to do, out of those three, you choose two. The first one, as you can see, it's a team job. This means that there are two cases there. One, it's an article, the public-private partnership, transparency and accountability, where is my data? And then there is a Siemens & Johnson case that I want you to analyze it and do the questions, okay? Second, write an analysis on the article named Propose New Guidance to Improve Public Sector Governance, which is in your Moodle as well. So you can choose, for example, one or two, or one or three, or two or three. It doesn't make any difference. Remember, there are two out of those three. The last one would be to read the article named Truth, Honesty, and Transparency in Public Administration and write an analysis on it. Remember, this last two, so 2 and 3, are individual tasks. So you do this individually. The first one, if you choose the first one, it needs to be done as a team job. So this means that you have to do it with someone else. So someone else choosing this in your team needs to do this with you. Even if the rest of the team do not choose number one, if another person chooses number one, this has to be conducted as a team job. So I need at least two people to choose one in order for the choice to be accepted. Okay, so I hope you understand this. I hope you're well, and I'll see you in Adobe Connect. But I wanted to leave this lecture so you have the information explained by me. And if you need any help, please let me know, and I'll be at your disposal via email. One thing, I have received some of your, most of your drafts, and I must say they're very, very good. I will tell you this in Adobe Connect, but I just wanted you to know, for those who have still not handed out their drafts. These are exceptional cases, and I'm giving you extra time to do this. So don't worry, you have time, and I will grade this. All right. Remember that on the 9th of April we will have the midterm. I will tell you more about this, but I want you to take into consideration that the drafts will be part of your midterm grade. Okay? All right. So I'll see you. Take care. Until next time. Okay. Bye bye. Take care. Bye bye.